Hi everyone, we're going to try a circuits lab today. And in this lab we're going to use this as our voltmeter. And it's digital, so we can just read the voltage right off the top of it. For amps, we're going to use this as our ammeter. And this one actually has two scales on it, a 1 amp scale and a 5 amp scale, depending on which one we need on how much current we're drawing through the circuit. So if the wire is going in this one, we're on the 1 amp scale, and we're going to read the top set of numbers. And on the 5 amp scale, the wire is going to be plugged in here, and we're going to read the bottom set of numbers. Now the way the lines work for this one is, if we're on the 1 amp scale, every little line is worth 0.02 amps. So that's going to be 0.02, 0.04, 0.06, 0.08, 0.1, 0.12, etc. So if it goes to this line right here, that means our measurement on the 1 amp scale is going to be 0.52 amps. Now on the 5 amp scale, it's a little bit different. Each line is actually worth 0.1 amp on the 5 amp scale. So if we go to, let's say, this mark right here on the 5 amp scale, that's actually going to be 3.6 amps at that point. All right. Now that we know how to read the scales, we're going to set up the circuit and see what measurements we get. All right, wiring the circuit up, we're going to connect the DC power supply and the ammeter in series with the coils of wire. And we're going to start off with coil number 1. The color of the wire makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. It is just kind of to be there for effect. So on all those movies where it says cut the red wire, that actually doesn't mean a thing. And I'm going to take this voltmeter and actually put it next to the ammeter so that I can get both in the same shot. Now I want to switch this to measure voltage. And as I turn things on, I want to move the camera in so you can get the data straight from the meters. I'll turn the power supply off, switch down to the next coil of wire, turn the power supply back on until I get through all 5 coils of wire. Some of these I can't leave on for very long because it will overtax the DC power supply, and we'll have some issues with that. So I'm going to try to do this as quickly as possible to get all the measurements. So for the coil number 1, turning things on, there's our volts and our amps. Switching things back off. Switching to coil number 2. Just changing places there. Okay. Switching back on. There's the volts and the amps. We're on the 5 amp scale, so we're going to use that lower set of numbers. Switching things back off. And then going to coil number 2. Oh, sorry, 3. Back on. Here is our voltage and our current for that one. Switching things off. Going over to coil 4. Turning power back on. Coil 4. This is the volts and the amps. Now those amps are low enough that I'm going to switch this one actually over to the 1 amp scale. So I'm not changing the coil, I'm just going to move this from the 5 amp scale to the 1 amp scale. So now we're going to use the top set of numbers, and every line is going to be worth 0.02. And then finally, we're going to switch over to the last coil of wire, turning power off, switching over to coil number 5. Coil number 5 is a copper nickel wire. So it's 22 gauge, 10 meters, but it's not pure copper, it's a copper nickel alloy. So, still on the 1 amp scale, there's the volts, and that's the current. Okay. Tune in later when we'll do a series circuit, a parallel circuit, and then possibly a combination circuit as well. Boom. All right. Oh, I think it's still recording.